Live the Goals Podcast, your place for motivation, life lessons, and laughter. Don't settle for wandering through a mundane life. Instead, let us help you reach your goals and live a fulfilling life doing what you love. Our guests know what it's like to live with purpose and laugh along the way. Warning, if you're a stick in the mud, you definitely need to stick around. Loosen up your ties, kick off your high heels, and let's get to it with your host, Dale Richardson.
Welcome back to Live the Goals Podcast, friends and family. Here with our interview guest today, Gina Gardiner. And Gina is a #1 international best-selling author, a motivational speaker, empowerment coach, transformational leadership trainer, NLP master practitioner. We'll have to talk about that a little bit. And a coach with well over 30 years experience of helping people achieve happiness and success. She has supported many, many individuals and couples to develop a greater sense of self-worth, the confidence to challenge and change limiting beliefs in order to become more loving towards themselves and others. Gina is passionate about helping her clients to achieve their full potential to become genuinely their best self. Gina, are you ready to help us set and reach goals that matter?
I'd like to think that I'm going to offer your listeners something that will be of help. I am absolutely passionate. It's my whole life purpose is to help people take their own power.
Oh, wow. If that's your purpose, I know you are more than ready, and we're going to jump into it. Before we jump into the questions, I'd love for you to just kind of expand on that bio I gave. Give us a little bit more about who Gina is.
I started off life as a teacher. I was very quickly promoted, and I was promoted to a school where I was to be the catalyst for change. I was the youngest of our 2 on the staff, told not to apply because they wanted to appoint a man, but they appointed me.
Wow.
6 months later, I had a really serious ski accident. I fell about 200 feet down a mountain.
Oh, my goodness.
Actually, I wasn't skiing at the time. I was sitting on a mogul, the carved out snow bit, and the sun melted it. I damaged myself, but thought I was on the road to recovery. Went skiing with a party from the school, and I became paralysed down one side on the last day. To cut a long story short, about 4 months after that ski accident, I became the head of the school because the head suddenly died. And I was the head teacher of that school for just over 20 years, and I ran the school most of the time from a wheelchair.
Wow.
And therein lies the gift, because I couldn't physically get into the classrooms because either the wheelchair was too wide, or even if I'd got into them, I couldn't get round them because of the children's desks.
Right.
I was determined that the school was going to do well. It was a big school. And so I had to find another way of empowering the teachers initially, and then children too, to take responsibility for their own performance. So to understand, what did excellence look like in the context of whether you were a maths teacher or an English teacher, or in terms of discipline or relationships. That it was successful is a matter of public record, because I'm really proud to say my school was on the best 100 schools in England list.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, I was ahead. But my health deteriorated, and in 2004 I was given an ultimatum by the consultant: stop working a 15-hour day running the school. And I did all sorts of things outside school to bring in a budget. We had a very poor budget, and to keep my school at cutting edge. And so I took the very difficult decision to leave headship. And then it was, well, what do I do now? I'm not ready to sit and watch daytime TV. I'm certainly not ready to sit and be disabled. And when I was working, much more able, because my brain, you can tell my mouth works, my hands work. And so I could run my school very effectively when I was at school. But at home, if my carer hadn't left a cup out of the cupboard for me, I couldn't make a cup of coffee. So quite a stark choice.
Yeah.
For me, a no-brainer. So I then started to look at what do I do now? And I looked at my skill set. I was already a qualified coach. I'd done a lot of training for the National College of Leadership and the Institute in London, an advisor for the DFES whilst I was head, not all at the same time. So I wrote my first couple of books to be really my credibility. And then I started to work with businesses strategically. But I've always done life coaching along the way.
Yeah.
And so I continued and developed that alongside. And so since 2004, I've been working for myself and gathered more skills, done a lot of studying, both here and in the States. I've been over through a number of things in the States. And, you know, I think for me, I know that I have a purpose, and it's a joy. It feels like playing, really, my work. I love it.
All right, Gina, lots of stuff in that story that we're going to touch on. I mean, we've got obstacles in there. We've got overcoming the obstacles and different goals and finding your purpose and passion and pursuing that. So Gina, you talked about a gigantic obstacle you faced, right? In being paralyzed, and that limiting your access to the classrooms, that limiting what you could or couldn't do at the school. And then you talked about another obstacle of having to decide, you know, am I gonna stay at the school where I am doing great, or do I have to contemplate going home where if someone doesn't leave a cup out for me, I don't know what to do. Take us back to that time and help us understand. I mean, I can't even really fully grasp how that must have felt. Can you take us back there and help us understand what you were going through?
The ski accident was in 1983, so a long time ago, and my health had deteriorated over the years to the point in 1996 I sneezed and I ruptured a disc.
Oh my goodness.
And I had failed back surgery, and I couldn't put my left foot to the floor without fainting. So I became a very good stalk because I used my right foot. It took me 18 months to walk to the bottom of my garden, and I haven't got at that time, I didn't have a very big garden. I haven't got a big garden now, but it was a different one. 2 years almost to the day, it was the end of the summer term again, I was sick and I ruptured another disc. And this time when I woke up, I couldn't stand at all. I was completely unable to bear my weight on my feet. And I got home on August bank holiday, the last weekend in August. And I lived in a house where I live in a bungalow now, which had stairs. I had a stair lift, but I had to have a wheelchair downstairs and a wheelchair upstairs and transfer from the wheelchair on a board. I couldn't support myself enough to get from one thing to the other.
Yeah.
And my house was not designed for somebody who was wheelchair bound, although I'd been using a wheelchair to get around distances before then. Up until that time, I could walk enough around the house, not to be an issue. And I think for me, the day when I recognised how challenging this was, I had carers who came in the morning who got me up and who helped me to get ready, helped me to the taxi to get to school, because I went back to school a week after coming out. And I was quite amused because 5 months later, the consultant said, I think we might talk about you going back for a couple of hours a week. And I just laughed. I've been back for 4.5 months. But what made it very evident to me was on one particular day, I had a different carer came in as a relief, and they hadn't left me a cup out of the cupboard at the top. And I was desperately thirsty, and I ended up, I could manage to get a saucepan, but I couldn't get a cup. And I went to the sink and I had to drink out of the saucepan because that was the only receptacle that I could reach.
Right.
And that was a pretty low moment.
Yeah.
But I believe it's not the challenge that defines us, it's what we do with it. And so I had a choice. I could be at home and be an invalid, or I could be at school and be completely productive. If I needed a cup of coffee, then I'd just say, can you make me one? And I could get on and doing something I absolutely loved and had a real purpose.
Yeah. Wow. What do you think about, or what do you have to share or say with people who might be somewhere close to there, right? They're in a situation that seems life-changing, or maybe it is life-changing, right? But it's something that seems almost insurmountable to them. Saying that you had that choice, it might sound to them like that's easier said than done. Do you have something extra you can tell somebody if they're there now to help them see that that they can make that choice and take action on it?
I think there are probably three parts to it, if that's okay with you.
Yes, please.
The first is, I think disability is actually a metaphor for life.
Mm-hmm.
My disability means, although I've now had a spinal stimulator fitted and I can walk short distances, which is brilliant. That happened in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
But if I can't walk very far, I can get into my wheelchair and I can wheel away. But if you have a belief that you're not good enough, or you're not clever enough, or you haven't got enough money, or you're not tall enough, or you're too old, too young, you take those beliefs with you and they disable you. Because if you believe you're lesser than the amazing person you are, that is in itself disabling. So I think one of the things that I would really say to anybody is, own the amazing person you are when you're genuinely being you, when you let go of the limiting beliefs and you start to look at what you can do rather than what you can't. And for me, that's a really big thing. If I looked at what I couldn't do, that would have been truly crippling.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, what could I do? What were the things that, despite everything, I could do and be, that actually were not dependent upon me being able to walk or run or jump or whatever, but were actually about being the best of me. And so for me, it's very much around focusing on what you can and using that as your starting point. And I suppose the third thing is, we all self-limit. And I'd like to tell you a story. I went to, I trained to be an NLP master practitioner, and I did all of my training with the same company, and they were brilliant. But I made the decision to go and look at lots of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those people was Tony Robbins, who I'm sure lots of your listeners have heard of.
Right.
So I arrived at the Excel Centre, which is a big conference centre in the east of London, to find 10,000 people on the course, which is in itself mind-blowing.
That's a lot.
It is a lot of people. And I went very cynical, actually, thinking, here's this great big bloke. It's all going to be hype, and after the course, the hype will have dissipated. What I found was, if you got past, and we English are very reserved, and all of the hugging and the leaping about took people a little bit of getting used to. I was really amused. There's all these men at the beginning. I don't know if you can see. There was at arm's length doing the hug. By day two are launching themselves and hugging one another.
Yeah.
But on that first day, we did the fire walk, and I was determined to do it. I could walk a little bit with help. And so for your viewers, the fire walk is where you're mad enough to walk across hot coals in your bare feet. And if you're in the right mindset, you have no burns. Mm-hmm. And I was really impressed with the fact that they got, I think only 10 people didn't do it, but they got the 9,990 people through in 3/4 of an hour and not a single burn.
Wow.
So I did the walk. I was very pleased with myself, I would say. And I turned to sit down in my wheelchair, and I looked at the guy behind me, who was a double amputee, who tipped himself up out of the chair, and he hand stood and hand walked across the hot coals.
Wow. And
I owe this guy a huge debt of gratitude, because in that moment I thought, what am I doing to self-limit?
Wow.
If he can do that, what can I do that I am at the moment not doing? And I'd looked at one of the other courses that Tony Robbins was on, called Date with Destiny, which was going to be in California. And I dismissed it out of hand, saying to myself, how will I manage to travel on my own in the wheelchair? How will I do it? And having seen that guy, I went straight home, booked my ticket,
wow,
my flight, and I went. I've now done all his stuff. I'm a senior leader. It's not all hype. It's brilliant stuff.
Yeah.
But my life would have been different if that guy, don't know who he is, hadn't shown me and shouted at me, don't self-limit. And that's what I'd say to your listeners. be aware that you are probably limiting yourself by beliefs that say, I can't, I shouldn't, I might fail, I might succeed. If you really want to do something and you believe it's possible, then it's almost a done deal. If you believe you can't, then it's never going to happen. Failure is absolutely your destiny. So, yeah, very grateful to that guy. No idea who he is.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting how inspiration, motivation, life-changing events can just happen wherever. And at a moment's notice, out of the blue, somebody you don't even know, just out of the blue, shared a moment with that person that changed the trajectory of your life. And it's just a reminder that we have to just go and do and be involved and be in the moment and experience, because you could have missed that, right? You could have been so involved in yourself that you not look back and you not pay attention to the other stuff going around you. And so, wow, I mean, I'm sitting here, my mind's blown at just thinking about him going across the hot coals on his hands. And
you will never know the impact he's had on me. And because I tell that story to my clients and my students who are saying, it's too hard, I can't. And I tell them that story, and not only his story, but the impact that had on me, where I was determined, so far as I was aware, that I would never knowingly self-limit. I'm sure that if you can't do anything about things you're not aware of, but it's something I'm very mindful of. Is if I'm just developing a new side to the business, which is requiring lots of technology and videoing and podcasting, to which I'm very new. I've been so far out of my comfort zone, I can't tell you.
And when I hear that, that makes me cheer and say, yay.
But the interesting thing about comfort zones is the minute you go across the line, your comfort zone expands and it becomes something that you can do. So now I've been to America, I've been to Brazil, I've done all sorts of things that I wanted to develop. And actually, my lack of ability to walk does not stop me doing any of those things. There are some things I can't do, and those I have to accept. But I focus on making things happen rather than making the excuse that I can't.
Yeah, and you know, this brings up an interesting topic. I don't know how it is there in your country, but here in the U.S., what I've noticed is a lot of times when people have some sort of limitation, whether it be physical, mental, or something of that sort, we've gotten to the place where and I'm going out on a limb here, where I feel like as a community, we don't even want to acknowledge that limitation, right? We want to tell that person, no, that limitation doesn't exist. It's not real. And I think there's a distinction here that I want to point out. And that is, I think what we're doing is we're equating that limitation with whether or not that person can do anything, right? And like you said, it was important for you to acknowledge that there are some things you can't do.
Yeah.
But by acknowledging that, you can open up all the other things and focus on all the other things you can do, right? It doesn't take away from your worth. It doesn't take away from what you can do in a whole. And going even a step further, just because this person has a physical limitation or this person has a mental limitation that's easily displayed, it really does. When we look at them and say, oh, that, there's that limitation, and you start thinking about what they can't do, you forget about all the limitations that everyone else has that aren't so visible, right? I mean, all the people that can't spell, that are horrible at math, and so forth and so on, and you find a way around it. And so I'm wondering, is it similar there? Like, I was blown away. I taught for a year, and I was actually blown away at how much the school was unwilling to admit the limitations of some students physically. Now, I don't mean your ability to learn, right? I mean, they didn't want to acknowledge that this student was slower in math. And so they would throw him in the class with everybody else, and they wouldn't even use certain language that lets you know that this person had a disability in this subject. because I think they equated that with the whole person. And, I've interviewed people like one of Tanner Gears is a person I interview who's blind. I mean, he talks about playing softball. I mean, how awesome is that? He's completely blind, playing softball, and think about the different senses that awaken and all the things. I mean, so I'm going on kind of a rant here on the soapbox, but I'm wondering how that compares where you are. Do you see that as well, or is there a different mindset over there?
I think there's a number of things to answer that. I mean, I'll tell a couple of stories very quickly. I was at a head teacher conference, principal, it would be the term that you'd use over there. The hotel was taken over. The only people staying in the hotel were principals. Okay, so we were in the bar and it was my round. So rather than send somebody else up, I wheeled to the bar and I had my money to get my round in. And somebody was behind me and the bartender said to the person behind me, "What would she like to drink?"
Wow.
My secretary at school used to get lots of enjoyment and amusement from because before I had my electric chair that lives in the car, wheeling me around town and people using a very specific voice. "Would she like a sweetie?" And treating me as if I had no brain cells at all.
Yeah.
And she was very amused by that, bearing in mind that the assumption was, and no mistake, that both roles were equally important, her as my secretary and me as head. We both had very important roles, but the assumption was because I was in a wheelchair that I was also mentally deficient too. Now, if you put alongside that, occasionally I get patted on the head in lifts where people will tell me how brave I am. I can have a big sign on the back of my chair saying, "Careful, she bites." But the interesting thing is that there has been a shift here, and the shift was the 2012 Paralympics. The coverage for the Paralympics here, I don't know what it was like in the States. It was the first time ever since its inception just after the Second World War, where it got pretty well equal coverage to the normal Olympics. And what they were doing was telling people's backstory. So, and that they were competing with times and distances very often that were within the realm of able-bodied people.
Right.
And I've noticed a very significant shift since 2012. It's not perfect, but it is a lot better. And I went to see Robbie Williams in concert on Friday. And what was very noticeable was how many people offered help. I'd been to things, perhaps a few years earlier and wouldn't have got that level of awareness. So I think things are shifting. They've still got a long way to go.
Yeah. Wow. It speaks to our presumptions, right? The presumptions that we make that can be so far, and it like to the point where it doesn't make sense. If you just stop and think about it for a second, it doesn't make sense. Well,
but it's not only disability. One of my
exactly
neighbors who has a PhD in maths, who is a very erudite man, went to the bank and he happened to be in a rush, so he'd stayed in his gardening trousers and they wouldn't let him see the bank manager.
Yeah.
So he went back in his suit and presented himself as Dr. Bayton, and he was given an appointment straight away. So it's not just around disability. We have these preconceived ideas about money, about people's status, about people's intelligence.
Yeah.
And I have time to challenge those.
Absolutely. Now, you talked about being an NLP practitioner, and I think you said master practitioner, right? Yeah. We've had a few people on the podcast that practice NLP. For people who are maybe just joining Live the Goals podcast and they have no idea what we're talking about, they're just three random initials. I'd love you to quickly kind of just tell us, bring them up to speed on what NLP is and how that plays into our success, or maybe our limiting of our success.
NLP, neuro, that's the brain, linguistic, language, programming, and we are all programmed. We have, well, they say 95% of what we say and do is habitual. that we go into patterns of behavior, patterns of thinking, patterns of belief that are established very often when we're very, very young, that we don't question. And so neuro-linguistic program, or NLP, for me is about using language to challenge, in the first instance, people's limiting beliefs and behaviors, and to then help with using language to change those.
Wow.
And it was developed initially in the 1970s. It came out of the study of psychology. It's got more and more efficient at finding ways to help people. So principles, generally people are doing the best they can with the resources that they have available to them. And the more open and the more confident you are, the more you can access your resources. That if you want to do something well and quickly, model somebody who was already excellent at it. Look for ways to shortcut.
Yeah.
It's about your beliefs drive your emotions and drive your behaviors. So if you want to make changes in your life, the first place to go is, what do you believe about yourself and the world?
Absolutely.
Because that is what's going to drive everything. And NLP is a very efficient way, really, of, I think, changing those. I think I've got to add a caveat. There are people who use NLP and they NLP you, and they use it as rather than it seeing it as one of many tools that you use in your kit bag, that they use it in a very particular way, which is not necessarily in the best interest of the person that. So it's often used by salespeople to get you to think that you want to buy it and so on. But I use it with a mixture of things, and it's a really helpful thing, and certainly helped my growth. I started studying when I left headship, and suddenly I didn't know who I was. If I wasn't being ahead and I wasn't running my school, then who was I? And so studying NLP enabled me to actually find me.
Wow. Gina, thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about what NLP is and how it helps people. We're actually at the point where we have to start winding down here. But before we kind of get into the wind down mode, I'd love for you to share maybe a goal that you're working on or you're excited about, or a project you're working on. I'd love for you to just share a little bit more about what's going on with your business that you're excited about.
I've got a very big project on at the moment.
Okay.
One of the things that I feel the need to do is to reach more people. That most of the time I'm working with individuals, couples, groups, organizations, but some of this stuff is really simple and can make a huge difference. And I feel that it's my purpose, really, and that sounds a bit posy, and I don't mean it to, that I need to reach more people, to give them some simple strategies that they can incorporate into every day. So at the moment, I've just set up a whole new program through genuinely-you.com, which is the website for this. We're working on setting up a membership program for people who want to thrive rather than survive. Yeah, with lots of information and help. And if you go on the website, there's loads of stuff already there and already done. And I'm inviting your listeners to sign up for a 7-part free video series called 7 Principles for Living a Happy and Successful Life. Yay. And they're the principles that I use. Playfulness is one of them. And they can find that on the website. And I've sent you a link as well. And then the big part of that is I'm about halfway through another book, which is about setting these principles out. But if people do want to know more about my story and the principles that I've used to help me thus far, I'm really proud that Chariots on Fire, which was the book before the one I'm writing, that's become an international bestseller, and I'm absolutely chuffed to bits that that's the case. And they can find that on Amazon, or they can find it on the website.
You know, it may sound hokey or whatever to some people, but to me, it's a beautiful sound to hear people say that they are living their purpose. They have a purpose, and they're working on that. And so good luck. I know you're going to reach a lot more people. I know that our friends and family listening will go and download and register for the 7-part course. So
Or come and join me on Facebook or on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm there. I'd love to see them, and particularly let me know that they've come through you. That would be fabulous.
Yay. Well, Gina, we are winding down now. We're at something I call the hot seat scenario. So are you ready to play the hot seat scenario?
Yes. Drum roll.
Yeah. So here we go. I am forcing you to swap lives with one of these two people. Yes. And after you tell me who you're going to swap lives with, I just want 1 or 2 really quick steps that you're going to do to kind of get them pointed in the right direction. So here you go. We've got person A. Person A is somebody who works, we'll say 40 to 50 hours a week, but is living check to check. And when she gets home, she's just drained. And so she just sits in front of the TV or maybe in front of her laptop or computer and surfs the internet. She just does anything to kind of wind down and get out of that day and then, go to sleep. Now, we've also got person B. Person B is somebody who is making really good money, whether you want, whatever that number is, whether it's 100,000, 200,000 or some other number. They're doing well, but they are not happy with their job either because they're there all the time. They really, she really feels like she wakes up in the morning, rushes out to work, and by the time she gets back home, it's time to go to sleep and do it all over again. Neither one of these people are living in their purpose. They now have realized that, and they're desperate to change something. So Gina, which one of these two people are you going to swap lives with, and what are those first couple quick steps you're going to take?
I actually think they've got the same problem, but just different sides of the same problem. So I think I would go for the second.
Okay.
Partly because they can very quickly put the same level of effort into making themselves the project and be used to doing that, and put the same level of mindfulness, attention, goal setting and action into taking charge of their life than the first person who has become a victim to life. They are so ground down that, recognize that instead of surfing the internet, well, why not actually spend that time on working on yourself? But I actually think they've both got the same problem, is that they're victims to their lives. And the first thing is awareness, recognizing that's not what you want. The second is to define what it is you do want. Because once you've defined that, the brain can start to look for ways to create that possibility. If you just know what you don't want, it's very hard for the brain and for you to plan what action you're going to take. And I think, taking stock and actually auditing what are the things you want to protect, what are the things that are important to you, and asking the question, if I'm going to be the one that got the high powered job that has a good remuneration, what is that costing, and how can I utilize the skills that I have to make something work? What's the purpose? And I believe for most people that they find their sense of fulfillment and purpose by looking at what they can do for others. And, both of them, random acts of kindness, being grateful, actually at the end of each day to look at what is there in my life that I can be grateful for. And both of them are going to be much better off than probably 50% of the population on this planet, because they've got a home to go to, they've got something to eat, they've got the opportunity.
Yeah.
But ultimately, know what you want, and then small steps. It's the small actions taken on a consistent basis that make the difference, rather than the grand gesture. And so step by step, make the change.
Wow. Thank you. Knocked it out of the park, Gina. Thank you for playing the hot seat. So we're done here, Gina. Before we go, just 2 more things from you. I know you gave us some information of where we can find you and what's there. So just give us again, before we leave here, the website. I want to make sure people know how to get to the website, and what you're listed as on Facebook, because you threw that out as well. And then I'd love to know a motivational quote or a mantra or something you use to kind of give you that little extra when you need a little push during one of those days that are a little more difficult than the rest of them. So Gina, the contact information and your motivational quote or mantra.
The website is all lowercase, genuinely-u.com. That's the usual HTTP :// stuff, but genuinely-u.com. I'm Gina Gardiner on Gina.Gardiner on Facebook, Gina.Gardiner50, I think it is, on Facebook. They'll be able to see because my photograph's there. I'd love to see people then. Please come and say hello. That would be wonderful. I think for me, the mantra, the thing that makes the difference is everything that we do is a choice. Everything. What we say, what we do, how we are, what we don't say. And every choice has consequences. And not choosing often has the most consequences, just letting things drift. And for me, people worry hugely about, am I going to make the right or the wrong decision? Mm-hmm. And most of the time, it's about, you're going to make a different decision. And that different decision will give you different options. So rather than all of that worry and anxiety about, is it right or is it wrong? If you know where you want to go to, there's any number of routes, and just be prepared to make a different decision. And ultimately, if it's wrong, you're going to learn from it. And that lesson is going to be of huge value to you. So go for it. What have you got to lose? Other than that, if you don't try, then you truly have failed.
Wow. Thank you, Gina. What a fantastic interview. Thank you so much for sharing with our friends and family and being willing and open and authentic to let us kind of discuss your obstacles and taking you back there. I appreciate that dearly. So friends and family, as you know, the links to Gina's website, her Facebook page, and her book and the other things that we discussed on this episode will be down in the show notes. So all you have to do is scroll down or look down and click on the link. It will take you right there. I'll also put a link in there for her freebie that she gave us. Yay! Friends and family, love having you with us. Thank you for joining us again. Until next time, remember to set goals that matter and live the goals you set.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure to meet you. And thank everybody for listening. I really appreciate your time. Time is really precious, but thank you.
Thanks for checking out the show today, and make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. We hope you take away something that helps fill your life with purpose and laughter. And make sure you head over to LiveTheGoals.com for more info on guests and resources. Remember to set and reach goals that lead you to a life of purpose and passion.